I'm Jim Collison and live from the Gallup campus here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Called to Coach, recorded on May 3rd, 2019. Called to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. You do have questions during this live webcast. We have a chat room that's available for you. There's actually a link right below the main video window on the live page. Click that. It'll take you to the YouTube's instance of it, and there's a chat room over on the right or down below it. 3 little buttons, pop it out, and then make sure when you are in chat, you're on the live chat, upper left-hand corner. Live chat, we'll make sure you get all the updated chat as it's coming through. I think I said chat like 8 times there. If you have questions after the webcast, we'd love to have you send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center, gallupstrengthscenter.com, for all your CliftonStrengths coaches resources and training needs. And we have some updates on that as well in this webcast today. You can also catch the video on both streaming and downloadable audio. That we call that podcasting, and really the best way to consume these on your phone, in a car, in a train, on a plane. Recapture that time you normally would just be staring out the window. You could be learning while you're doing that. Coaching, all the details on that, coaching.gallup.com. Austin Suellentrop is our guest today. Austin is the new CliftonStrengths Portfolio Manager. Austin, that's the first time I've been able to say that kind of officially. Welcome to Called to Coach, and congratulations.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, let's get to know you and then a little bit about your role and kind of what you see it. So tell us who you are, top 5, where you came from, what you do, all those good things.
Yeah, for sure. So hello, everybody. Austin Suellentrop. I live here in Birmingham, Alabama. So I'm coming to you from the Gallup office in Birmingham, Alabama, which is right next to my living room, right? So you may see Perry, my chocolate lab, walk by at some point today. But really excited in my new role as the CliftonStrengths Portfolio Manager. So how'd I get here? Who am I? What's this all about? Top 5 are communication, number 1. So I love to tell a good story and think out loud. Activator, futuristic, belief, and positivity. So the whole fiasco of the recording not working, it works out. It's all good. So I am attracted to strengths and have been since I was a client of Gallup's. So I actually started my journey with Gallup probably over a decade ago as a retail branch manager working for a major regional bank here, where we partnered with Gallup to measure our customer engagement. So I knew Gallup for years as my Gallup score for how my customers were feeling about coming to my bank branch. And then in 2012, I actually got this really cool chance to be a part of a project at our organization partnering with Gallup, where we launched this thing, what we called associate engagement. And we started measuring our internal employee engagement back in 2012, which was a great time in banking. Everything was going really smooth. There was no turmoil in the markets. Banks weren't collapsing or anything like that every day. Actually, that was the complete opposite. It was the heels of the worst collapse in history. So it was a great time for us, learned an awful lot, got the chance to understand about workplace needs and workplace culture, and fell in love with this idea of emotional sort of understanding of people. And it was a fit. And so in our partnership with Gallup in 2012, got introduced to strengths for the first time. Became a Gallup certified strengths coach in 2013, actually. So went to Omaha, did the ASC with my 2 course leaders. One was Kurt Liesfeld, was sort of my first mentor around strengths, where I learned a lot from. And then the second one became my best friend at work for many years and still is to this day, Mara Hugerhouse. And so she and Kurt were my intro to strengths. Fell in love with it. Actually learned that 34 for me was learner. And it was the most liberating feeling in my entire life. I remember coming home from my ASC and having a Kindle, a brand new color Kindle that I had bought because I was trying to make learning fun and reading fun. And I came home, realized learner was 34, and handed the Kindle to my wife. She has learner number 7, and handed it to my wife and said, "Honey, it's yours. No matter what fancy device I put it on, I'm not going to read for fun. It's just not who I am. And so that started my strengths journey back in 2013. And
Austin,
then
before you go on, you and I are a lot alike in that learning component, because I'm the same with you.
Yeah.
I actually learned through communication. So
Yep.
communication for number one for you, right?
Yep.
I get that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we, in the future, this is actually a really good partnership where I think between you and I, where the themes line up. We spend a lot of time talking about how these strategic partnerships of where maybe they're opposite. You and I actually align really nicely. You've got a few that I don't, and I have a few that you don't, but around the communication in this platform will be very strategic in coming to you, kind of talking you through very important. We're going to talk about this a little bit later, but over the next 6 months, so it's May 2019, between now and let's just say the end of the year, really important you listen to these. And I don't just say that because I want download numbers. We're going to have some amazing information coming for you. And Austin, great to partner with you. I partnered with Tiffany in this way as well, of teaching you through the communication strengths that we have. So I'm excited to have that with you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Likewise. Yeah. And so you think about where we are now. I've spent the last 3 years as a consultant with Gallup. Loved my experience so much as a client. I had the chance to go to clients around the world and do that. Talk about culture, talk about team effectiveness, about leadership development, and so forth. And it's been a lifelong sort of journey for me. I remember when I was a kid, my dad, who's worked in the healthcare industry, would come home every day and he'd ask me the same question every day. He said, "Austin, what did you do to be a leader today?" Asked me that question my entire childhood. And so it was not coincidental that I had this attraction to leadership work and to leadership development. So now I get to do that with organizations around the world, right? And so it's really exciting. Coaching has been a calling for me for sure. Got my ICF certification. Love to coach people, coach my children. I coach my wife. I coach my wife with her permission. I don't just voluntarily coach her, right? And then coach coaches around the world. So this is who I am, what I do. In my new role as a portfolio manager, I sort of oversee a lot of the strategy we have for strengths and how do we grow it? How do we grow the strengths movement? So this community, this Call to Coach community, is a vital piece of that, and both being advocates for what we do, but also the impact that this community makes every day, spreading the good news of strengths and using it inside organizations and with clients. Really excited to be here more frequently, to hear from you, to share some of the things we're thinking about, and really sort of take our work to the next level. That's what I'm excited about.
You mentioned ICF. As we're recording this is kind of the end of ICF week, so to speak. They're sponsoring that this week. We actually, early in the week, were able to publish our community update with Angela Davenport that we did back in the beginning of the month, and then publish it. It was an accident. I'd love to take credit for it, but it was just happened to be ready during this week. And so if you haven't gone out and listened to that, and as we talk about, I think, Austin, some of the things over the next year, we're going to continue to emphasize a lot in this area of certification. And we have some great stuff coming in the area of certification as well. Again, you're going to want to stay close to this. But if you haven't listened to it yet, we just released that through the regular channel. You'll want to go out. It'll say community update, Angela Davenport, who is our certification expert. We interviewed her and spent some time doing that. So you'll want to do that as well. Austin, when we think about the community and as you see the community going forward and kind of your priorities for what we're doing. And by the way, I'm really excited about what you're to bring, because this is something I had been talking with Tiffany about right before we moved Tiffany into a different role. Kind of, she is overseeing all of our product now, and you're coming in to kind of fill in the strengths community from a portfolio standpoint. But culture is really important. And we see this question a lot coming up. How do I, or what do I do on a strengths-based culture? And I think some folks kind of feel like that's just blunt force trauma of people's top 5 and get everybody browbeaten to know what they are. And I think we've done a lot of research around this, and we have a lot of work coming out here in the next year on this. And you're here to kind of highlight that a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about that, what it means in your vision for strengths-based cultures?
Yeah, absolutely, Jim. I appreciate that. So it's probably the single most common question that we get, and I know that I got in my time as a consultant from organizations or from advocates inside organizations, of saying, "Hey, I want to make my company strengths-based. I want I want to create a strengths-based culture in my church, in my school, in my company, whatever it may be. And when you think about that, what it's really, what I think is oftentimes really coming from that or driving that request is, hey, we want to do things better. We want to be better at selling. We want to be better at achieving outcomes. We want to have less turnover. It's oftentimes motivated by some sort of outcome you're trying to create, right? And so if we think about what it means to build a strengths-based culture, we study this. It is absolutely more than just making sure everybody has their top 5 on their email signature, right? That's a check the box sort of part of a checklist component, right? So what we've done is we've studied the organizations we've worked with over the years that have really done a successful job of embedding strengths into who they are. Because if you think about culture, it's one of those hot words in the business community, right? Culture and like agility, like all those types of sort of hot things we do. Everybody's talking about them, but what does it really mean? We think about sort of beginning with culture and understanding the word. It's really how stuff gets done inside your organization. Like, how do you get things accomplished? So when we study the organizations we worked with over the decades and what they've done most effectively to embed strengths in how they get stuff done, there are some things that stand out, right? That we've been able to identify 5 really key steps, if you will, to building that strengths-based culture. And so what I'd like to do today is give you a highlight of those 5 and a little bit of an insight maybe into what they are, but also understanding before we dig into the tactical pieces of it, right? That it's important for every organization to remember we're all starting in different places, right? So every culture, it doesn't matter where your beginning point is. If you're wanting to become strengths-based, how these 5 things come to life is going to look different for you. Where you're starting, what tailwind, what support you may already have in the organization, or potentially what headwind you're going to have to be fighting against. Every company is starting in a different spot. And that really does, I think, create different launch pads, if you will, for each of these 5 steps we're about to walk through. So I think that's the sort of one caveat I'll give before we dive into it.
Yeah, no, it sounds good. This is available. As folks are listening, you can, if you're you're listening to the recorded version of this, go to Gallup.com, search strengths-based culture, and you can follow along with us kind of as we talk about this. But we got a thing or two to say about this. So Austin, why don't you lead us out?
Yeah, absolutely. So first step in building a strengths-based culture, and we very sort of concretely and clearly put this out there. You've got to start with the CEO. And that statement scares a lot of people, right? But I think when we say this, we got to start with the CEO or at least an executive sponsor. You've got to have somebody at the highest level of the organization that brings both the respect, the credibility, but also has the line of sight across everything that's happening in the organization to give some credence to why this is important. Right? So when we say starting with the CEO or the exec sponsor, what we're really saying is making sure that building a strengths-based culture is connected to the business strategy at hand. This is not a fun little HR fad. This is not a employee appreciation week type of event. This is something that's going to help drive our business, right? And the easiest and most effective way we've found to do that is to get a leader at the top of the organization vocally supporting it.
Austin, does that mean as a coach, say I'm working at some of the team levels?
Yeah.
Does that mean if I don't have executive sponsorship, I should stop doing what I'm doing until I get that? Or are there things we could be doing in between, or at least building our way up to that? Talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. I think that's a great, and I think a lot of organizations start in the middle of the organization somewhere. Right? They start with a leader, a mid-level manager who's got a passion for this, or you have an opportunity with a department to do something. That's great. I think what we understand is to take it from that pocket. So I say, no, do not stop what you're doing. Keep that work going. But to take it from that pocket to the whole organization, at some point we're going to have to get that senior level, that executive level leadership bought in. So I think that's where understanding the existing culture you're in really does matter. Example for you. I worked with an organization for several years, helping them really get Strengths up and running. And what was beautiful about their understanding, their approach to getting their CEO bought in, was they knew if that very early on, the CEO was on board with developing people, on board with trying new things, and on board with shifting how they were approaching their business. So they knew they could have gone to their CEO day one of this and said, hey, we want to do Strengths. Let's get this to roll out. We want to make Strengths go everywhere and change our culture with it. Had they done that day one, knowing their culture, it was very much an execution-oriented culture. Had the CEO said, Strengths is the new thing, we're doing it, we're moving forward with a strengths-based culture, within a couple months, the entire company would have taken the assessment and gone to some sort of workshop, but it would have been another thing on their project list. It would have been another action on their to-do list, where it would have been just another order they were following. It wouldn't have had the same potential sort of excitement around it. So they did, Jim, what you're talking about, where they went and worked with managers and with teams that were really amped up for it. And then after they had 5 or 6 success stories throughout the organization, then they went to the leader and said, look at the impact that this Strengths thing is having across the company. We'd like to amplify that impact and take it to everybody. How can you help us do that? And so when the CEO got on board, there were examples already inside their company of how it has been making an impact, right? So it was still working to get the CEO behind it and giving the support, but it wasn't going straight to them because they understood their culture, that it may not have worked for them that way.
Yeah, one of the things as coaches, as we're talking to coaches here, I think the really important bit in this is we're thinking about this executive sponsorship is if you're already working with some folks in that area, make sure you've got tangible benefits. Mm-hmm. You're pulling tangible benefits out of those teams, and that it goes very, very tracked, because that's one of the best things. Many at that level, if you're having success, are not going to say, oh, no, I'm not interested in success. Right?
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. Well, and so I think understanding, and again, knowing the culture of your starting point, if you will, right? Understanding the best approach. What we know is to get it to take root in the organization and then sustain, it has to be supported from the top, right? So whether you start day one, first activity with that exec team or not, you should be working towards that, right? And that at some point, for it to really take root across, it's got to be viewed as important and vital to your company's success by that leadership team.
Yeah, super good. Step 2.
Yeah. Step 2. So you've got the buy-in, right? This has got to be something that goes to every single employee. So we've got to give every employee the opportunity to truly discover their strengths, right? So when we say that, it's not something that's reserved for managers. It's not something that's reserved for full-time employees. It's not something that's reserved just for people in development programs, right? We've got to, if you really want to make culture shift, culture's every person in the organization, right? And so if we think about what's happened in those companies that have really been most successful with this, what we see is the rise in collaboration that takes place, right? That in 2019 in the workplace, collaboration is the new norm. There's a lot more matrix teams. Our State of the American Workplace research will support all this, right? That people are interacting with more people and faster feedback than ever before. Well, part of the real benefit of strengths and a strengths-based culture is the language to talk about what people do well. And if not everybody's exposed to that, if not everybody has the understanding of what they're at their best and when they're thriving, you're losing some of the amplified impact of that collaboration, right? So when we think about building a strengths-based culture, we've got to figure out a strategy in a way to get it to everybody, right? And so there's a lot of different ways you can do that tactically, right? But when we think about those organizations who have succeeded in really shifting their culture to strengths from maybe more deficit-based or traditional-based approaches, it's when they figured out, this is how I'm going to take it to the masses. So I'm going to get it out of just the ones that I can do workshops with and get it to sort of the mass, if you will.
Austin, last week we had Kelly Parks on, and she was talking about deploying strengths into the school district.
Yeah.
And she said, get it to we need the bus drivers, the custodians, right?
Yeah.
Holly asked a question in the chat room, and she says, suggestions about the fringe, right? The bus drivers and the custodians, maybe the fringe, right? And when you talk about that in an organization of getting everybody, any ideas on that value proposition? Maybe some areas it's easy, but in the difficult areas, what do you think there?
That's a great question. I love the word of the fringe, and thinking of them that way. So I always, if I'm going to prioritize my effort, because creating a strengths-based culture is an effort, and it's an investment, and there's a lot of emotion and energy poured into it. I'm going to prioritize first my people who are on fire for this already. I'm gonna pour my effort and energy into the people who have an appetite and are asking for this, right? My next sort of segment of energy and effort may be my managers or team leaders, right? So the people who have sort of the ability to impact people's daily life every day, right? And then maybe my third level of energy, my third focus area might be those who aren't as easily reached with programs, with mass communications, with sort of day-to-day. So maybe these are the fringe we're talking of, the part-time employee, the remote employee, right? The people who may not be as in the loop or as easily sort of visible to everything that's happening. So I think one of the ways I would sort of tactically think about reaching that group, right, is go through the manager first, right? Every employee has a manager. If you're really building a strengths-based culture, then one of the things that should be happening is there should be conversations between managers and employees. So before you think about the strengths assessment component and you think about the tool, if you will, the first step may be making sure they're having ongoing conversations with their manager. That can be a big step in shifting the culture. I'll never forget the first company I worked for that we didn't have regular one-on-ones. And here I am, Mr. Communication. I walk in, I'm expecting dialogue on a daily basis about things. And I'm having to set meetings 3 weeks out with my manager because that wasn't part of the culture, right? So I would say that's the first tactical thing, is at least begin with conversations with the manager, right? And then I think one of the things you can really do there is empower the manager with simple tools to bring strengths into those conversations. And we're going to get to some of that in some of the future steps. But that to me is the most consistent way to sort of reach the fringe, right? In terms of showing them value is going through the manager. The other way is by when you have success, when you find things that are working, how do you shout those success stories from the rooftops? How do you celebrate the big wins you're having? How do you get the testimonials and the videos and the whatever it may be, ways of demonstrating the value you're talking about earlier? How do you get those to not just be financially mentioned, right? Where it's business impact, bottom line, the things the executive team are going to really care about. How do you make it more real day-to-day? Team members talking about how Strengths has made it more fun, or Strengths has made it easier to share ideas with each other, right? I think some of those kinds of things can soften it, because the fringe employee is oftentimes the more skeptical employee. I'm saying, like, what's this HR thing they want me to do again, right? Didn't we just do DISC? I think that's what they can think of, and we've got to be able to show them it's more than that.
Austin, if you had a choice to work with 250 employees for 90 minutes or a team for a week.
Oh, wow.
When we think about culture and the impact you could have, and you can't say both, what do you lean towards? Because I feel like sometimes our coaches get that choice where, it's kind of faddish too, to do these 90-minute introduction kind of things as well. And I see a lot of coaches are getting those opportunities, but in the when we're trying to build culture, is there a preference between, if you had a choice?
Who are the 250 would determine it, right?
Okay,
if it's 250 managers that I can talk to for 90 minutes and I've got the opportunity to follow up with them and their teams, that's a legit opportunity I might be excited about. In terms of an organization shifting how an organization gets stuff done, give me a week with a team and I can really help transform their view on getting stuff done. Right. And so I'm not sure there's a right or wrong way there. I think there's a preferential approach. I'm a maximizer, right? So I'd much rather really polish it up with that one team and know I've changed the course of that one team and how they interact with other teams and the ripple effect of that. I think culture can be so intimidating sometimes for people. It's a big word that they can feel like, what can I do to change the culture of my company? Well, in what we know is in highly matrix, highly connected, agile organizations, which is only becoming more and more the norm, one team touches a lot more employees than it ever has before, right? And so I think we can actually have a bigger impact if we own our team than we may realize.
Yeah, no, I love that thought process. It's not one or the other, but it's really thinking through where can I have the maximum impact in doing that. Success really is one of those things that people have a hard time pulling away from. And I think when you're showing success, when teams are showing success using these things, I always fear the one and done, and it doesn't really have an impact, and it doesn't go beyond the 60-minute or the 90-minute presentation. And then people are skeptical because it's like, well, what did that lead to? Yeah. And I think we really have to be careful to show that it's having an impact on the team and it's creating change in a positive way. If the team is truly working better together, if they're truly producing more together, if they're truly increasing their engagement together based on these, right? These are all levers. Strengths is all a tool to do that. Yeah. We got to show that, right? We got to show that success. Otherwise people are going to kind of be like, well, I don't know. It's just, is it the next thing? So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How about 3? Yeah.
So think about this. You got leadership support. You've got everybody exposed to their strengths. Now you've got to build some network internally to help coach people to their strengths. So we would call this building an internal network of coaches. I think the thought here is you've got to have people inside the organization that can help reinforce how people apply their strengths on a daily basis, right? How do people apply their strengths to their roles? How do they shift behavior around their strengths, right? So that they can really sustain this and really, to your point, make the impact. So I think about this one as understanding, again, my role as an external coach, right? If I'm an external coach, I hear this and say, oh my gosh, Austin, you're telling me that I got to go tell clients to build coaches internally. I say, you got to, as an external coach, be thinking about who are the right audiences for me inside of this organization for me to make sure I'm coaching, and who are the audiences that I don't have capacity or I don't have realistic ability to be reaching in the moment. Because this is really about coaches inside the organization being able to get that in the moment feedback. So oftentimes this network of coaches may be HR partners. This network of coaches may be managers, right? This network of coaches may be trainers, if you will, right? But this is people who can give in the moment feedback around this, right? There is such a need for improved coaching in organizations, which this audience, gosh knows that they understand that. We all get that this should be thinking about how do you scale what you're doing inside of an organization, rather than thinking about how do you, offload it to them. It's more about scaling the impact of coaching, rather than it being for a select few people in the company. That there's people inside this organization who can have these kinds of conversations that we all know are so valuable throughout the organization. Bring the question. I know there's questions on this one, so let's
bring those in as they're doing that. Let me say this. Some of the best organizations that we work with have large internal teams of coaches available. Southwest, who's going to speak at the Clifton Strengths Summit coming up here June 3rd, 4th, and 5th of 2019, is going to be here and be enforced to kind of talk about that. And I think, Austin, that's an investment a lot of organizations kind of struggle to make sometimes. But in these 5 steps, for me, there's no question why it's in the middle. In the sense, I think it's the linchpin, right? I think it's that centering piece that really makes everything else attached to it. To have this team in the organization that kind of can push this forward, whose job, whose role, whose focus, emphasis ideation is around this and can do it. It's tough to push these things forward in organizations when there aren't some folks dedicated to it, right?
Exactly. And I think I want to distinguish a delineation between two things. There's a difference between being a strengths coach inside of a company and being a champion for strengths inside of a company, right? When we're talking here, we're talking about people who are actually sitting down and giving that true coaching around strengths, not just the advocates, not just the people who are cheerleading for strengths and saying how great it is. We've worked with a lot of clients, and I've seen this a lot myself personally, where with the best of intentions, companies will build these great champions networks for strengths, and they'll train people on strengths, and they don't have the tactical guidance on what they should go do next. So what they end up doing is they end up telling people how great strengths is. They end up telling people their top 5, and at lunch they share a fun story or two about it, but it never really takes traction because we haven't been really tactical with the organization around, here's what you should go do. Here's how you do it, right? Here's what that conversation with a manager or an employee should sound like. And so this in the middle really is about building a network of people who can give that ongoing coaching to people that may not be being reached by a coach right now, right? And I think that's really what we're saying here.
Yeah, no, I think it's just a great reminder too of the infrastructure to build in. This is going to require some internal infrastructure to build in. I think about it as an organization, it'd be easy for us to drop into organizations and say, okay, we're going to provide all your coaches and work that environment. And yet we don't. We say it's important inside the organizations. We're training coaches for you to continue to make this scalable, right?
Yeah.
And we're actually trying to embed. If you're a coach and you're working with an organization, that may be one of those steps to, and I think some coaches may want to protect their boundaries to say, but if we're training internal coaches, that's going to replace me. No, that really just elevates you in your work that you're doing there.
And so to that point, one way I've thought about it over the years, and I've seen several other sort of models this way that may make sense to sort of explain this. If you think about the organization, different levels inside an organization, everybody needs some sort of coaching, right? Everybody does. But the vast majority, we'd say somewhere in that 70% range of people are going to get their coaching from their manager, right? So if you think about that, 70% roughly get the coaching from their manager. The next 20% may get that coaching from an internal network of coaches, right? So this network you're talking about is building this up, and they're helping managers with their coaching. Then there's that top 10% in an organization, right? That if they're looking for coaching, odds are they're going outside their organization for it. They're looking for independent perspective, independent view, right? That 10% may not ever be handled by this network of internal coaches, right? That 10% may always be somewhere else, right? So to your point, it's a higher level of coaching. It's more elevated, higher stakes sort of type of coaching. That's one way to think about it in terms of how these work together. The need to support managers, internal coaches, and sort of more of that leadership executive coaching.
Austin, we had Chris Townsend on here, the program. He's one of those champions, enthusiasts in the organization, doing everything he can. What kind of encouragement for a lot of our listeners are probably in that boat? They're doing it quarter time, half time. They'd love to do it full time. It's not in the cards right now for whatever reason, right? It's just not working out. You're not asking them to take on a second job, right, and be a coach there. What kind of encouragement would you give those enthusiasts and champions?
Yeah, so that's how I started. I think that's the first thing and foremost, right? That was me. I had a passion for it, fell in love with it, couldn't do enough of it, right? I was looking for every chance I could to get involved. And so I think the first bit of encouragement is to make sure you're giving yourself the recognition for the impact you're making with the conversations you are having, the teams and the managers you are impacting. Is like pause every now and then and reflect on the 6 people you did have great conversations with, or the 3 people that you helped navigate a difficult situation at work. Don't lose sight of that, because I will tell you, those things snowball, right? So I would really encourage you to make sure you're remembering the impact you are making. Second thing I'd tell you is it doesn't The most impactful strengths conversations and culture conversations I've ever had have almost always come in informal settings, right? They've almost always come more in a lunchroom conversation, a cafeteria discussion, in the break room than they ever have in a boardroom, right? And so that to me is where that champion advocate role can be so powerful, is when you're hearing discussions happening and you're able to chime in with a perspective that can change the trajectory of that conversation. People are getting frustrated about something. They don't see the value, don't get into it. And you can come in and change how they're thinking about that topic. That's remarkably powerful stuff. And we are trying to shift a culture. If you can be that person who's got their ears out and eyes out for the informal discussions, what I affectionately call the meetings after the meeting, right? Those types of discussions, I think, are where that group can play a really profound impact.
Carmela says in the chat room, she says, this is why step one is so important, right? That the org sees the value of strengths pulled across the org and invests, taking people like you or both to triangulate the impact that the org sees. You know, and then maybe in Chris's case, he says, you know what, I love what I do. I'm not I don't necessarily want to be in that role. And great. And so Chris, some opportunities to kind of continue to have those conversations about, do we have, what is the right level of coaching in our org? And sometimes that could be you, or that could be somebody else that you bring in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, though I teed it up earlier in that your starting point culturally can sort of change the launch pad for all these a little bit. And so if I think about if we're not a strong coaching culture to begin with, right, then this step of 3, it may require more outsourcing of this, right? But if we've got a strong coaching culture to begin with, what we're really doing is we're integrating strengths into it. And so it's a different kind of launch. What we know is that taking the assessment and reading your report, which can by itself make a really big impact on somebody, but it doesn't make near the impact as it does when you pair it with a conversation and people are able to explore and have a dialogue about what it means to them. So what we're trying to do with this internal network is sort of, exponentially grow the opportunity for those conversations, where we've now said we've made the investment of resources to get people the assessment and the reporting and insight. How do we then leverage the investment we've already made by giving them the platforms for conversations?
Steps 4 and 5 have internal implications into orgs, and so let's kind of lump them together a little bit as we talk about those. Do that now.
Yeah, sure. So the 4th step, you've got this conversations happening now, is how do you really integrate strengths into how you manage performance, right? So how do you connect strengths into the ongoing performance conversations you're having, whether that be your performance management model or that be a system? More than anything else, what it's about is the discussion that managers and employees have around how they're performing, right? And so I think one of the most mind-blowing statistics to me that we've published in the last few years, and we publish a lot of data, my favorite one is that only 14% of employees strongly agree their performance reviews inspire them to improve. Like 14% of employees are like, you know what, performance reviews actually help me do a better job. So I was a math major for one day in college. And so that means 86% are having some hesitation in saying that review is helping them perform, right? So what we know is that's not always the system that drives that. More often than not, that's the conversation. It's the value in the discussion they're having. And so if we can bring strengths into that performance conversation between manager and employee, all of a sudden now, if it's a strengths-based discussion and I've been having other strengths-based conversations throughout the year, I'm excited. I'm a little more amped up to go into this discussion because I'm confident. I know what I do well and I know what I don't do well. So now the things I don't do well, I'm looking at it from a perspective of, well, is that a non-talent issue? Like I'm not talented in that kind of stuff? Or is it an overplaying talent, right? And I had the best performance review of my entire life. Was the first time I had somebody, a manager, actually pull my strengths into the discussion. I was scared. New role, new team. I'm sort of antsy, high activator, right? So I got a lot of nervous energy going on. And my manager walks in and she goes, like, Austin, tone the activator down for like 30 seconds and hear me out. I said, okay. She goes, everything we're going to talk about today, you and I have already talked about. What we're going to talk about more that's different is we're going to talk about how you're going to use your best self to plug in these gaps that you know are there. And that was the thing. She said that you know are there. It wasn't pointing out the things that she has been seeing and sitting on for a year, right? And so she told me a story that I was in a meeting. I'll never forget this. I'm in a meeting with an executive presenting information for the first time. And she said, Austin, I know you're going to want to talk and share all these stories. You got all these great stories. I need you to pick your best story. Pick your one best story for this meeting. And when you feel like you can share that story and it's going to be impactful, share it. So the whole meeting, I'm sitting there and I'm waiting. I'm like, oh, that's a story. Nope, not the best one. And about the third story that popped in my head, I shared it. I got the executive to chuckle, nod his head in agreement with my point, and give the green light on the project. And that was an example of her knowing my strengths, that I'm a good storyteller. I can talk, I'm comfortable, I'm going to want to think out loud. But it was a reflection for me that it was the first time she didn't say, hey, Austin, don't talk during this meeting. Or, hey, Austin, I know you're going to want to talk. You got to shut up for the next 30 minutes, right? It was empowering me to say, hey, think of the best story you got. Let it fly. But you got one crack at this. So you make sure you use the best story. When we're talking to our employees about performance and how we manage performance, the ability for managers to make that small shift to empowering their people to take action from a position of strength, rather than focusing on what they've just done that whole year from a position of, I don't have it, or I failed, or I missed the ball, right? That's what we're talking about, is that we know for that conversation, for my manager to have that really effective performance review with me, it took us investing time before that day talking about what I did best. So you can't introduce it in the performance review and have it expected to make it sort of the impact. You get that impact when you've been doing these other things.
Yeah, I love that concept of give me your one best idea, because that also speaks to your maximizer. You're kind of thinking through that, piece, and then bringing it up as a value, saying, look, I value, and we know, and yet that's a good, like you and I, same boat. I need that kind of advice. Like, hey, one good thing, not 18. As we do this, we did a deep dive just last week. Ben Wiegert came on, and we did a deep dive on performance management. And so if you want to, we have a whole series going on called Gallup Research for Coaches. And if you want to go back, it's still live. We haven't produced it yet, but that will become available too, where Austin, we really dive into this performance management idea to get depth to this. We think about step 5. I want you to talk a little bit about it and then answer the question, does these processes, are they linear? Or do I have to do one after the other? Can I be doing them at the same time, or do I have to do one step after the other?
Bingo. So let me cover 5, then I'll answer that.
Yeah, perfect.
So the fifth step, I think, as Jim said, it does build, and this is about how you actually transform your internal programs. So how do you weave strengths and the idea of strengths-based development into all your programs around the employee experience? So that's onboarding. That's new manager selection. That's manager onboarding. That's transitioning of new teams. That's when you promote somebody. That's what the entire recruitment process. How are you embedding the concepts of strengths-based development into everything you're doing? Right. And so I think it's important there that you see it's about strengths-based development. It's not about CliftonStrengths, the tool. Right? Because you don't want to have CliftonStrengths, the tool, be involved in your hiring process, right? You don't want to be messaging around CliftonStrengths, the tool, when you're selecting people for roles. What you do want to be doing is talking about what people do best, talking about how people get to do what they love to do every day. You do want to be talking about putting people in positions to succeed, right? So it's a combination of where can we connect this tool and the conversations and that to our programs, but also more the concepts, right? So what we know is that the sustainability of this, the stickiness of strengths, it's only going to really work if people are reminded of it all the time, right? So that's why you see, if you ever get an email from anybody at Gallup, that's why you see our top 5 on our email signature, right? It's because we've had Jim and I have had dozens of conversations about our strengths and about how we're aligned and how we're different. But every time I get a message from Jim, it's a reminder. It's a refresh. It's not an introduction. It's a refresh, right? Well, it's part of that sustainability piece. Likewise, every time I go to Omaha to an event with 50 of my peers, we got name tents, we got name badges that have our top 5 because it's reminding us of what we've discussed in the past, and it's a quick refresh. If I'm a manager or if I'm an employee in an organization, I went through some great transformative workshop, right, with my team 6 months ago, and we're getting back together for an all-hands meeting, and the strengths aren't there overtly in front of me, I may not remember them. If you put it in front of me, okay, yep, I remember we talked about this. I'm going to take advantage of his futuristic in this conversation. I remember this. I can get him excited about that. So the transformation of internal programs is what helps create some of that sustainability.
Yeah, it's one of the great things Tiffany did when she took over kind of internal learning for us, which was she was a coach, she taught, she came out, she took over internal learning, was to roll Theme Thursday into our onboarding.
Yeah.
So, we have all this video that we've made for you, the coaches out there, but we realized hey, people can come in and watch these. And so part of our onboarding program is to have them go through their top 5, any of the seasons, and they can, or all of them. And Austin, I get tons of comments back from our employees now who I don't know, who come up to me and say, hey, I feel like I know you. And then they'll say, thanks for that. I mean, that was super helpful coming in to reinforce kind of who I am. And nothing magical there, just creating that as part of the onboarding process. It was great to see that happen. And you would think, why didn't we do that before? Well, it took somebody to say, we need to embed this stuff in. Yeah. So pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Final thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think that all 5 of these, the idea of are they linear? Can you do them at the same time? Whatever it may be. I will tell you, find your pocket where you have the easiest point of entry. If you're trying to build a strengths-based culture here, you look at these 5 steps, right? What we know is it's going to take all 5 of them to get you there, right? I think it would be naive of me to sit here and say, you've got to do number 1 first. Well, that's not how I've done it, right? I've had success starting with number 3 and 4, right? I've had success starting with number 5 and building out from there. What I will tell you is, if you know your niche and you say, okay, maybe you're doing an audit right now of an internal program for a company. Maybe you're an external coach who has a role in one program that this company uses. Maybe that's your entry point. Great. Use it as your entry point. But then you have a structure here of 5 things. This is the big picture strategy it's going to take to really transform it. You may start with number 5. But you can't go 2 years with number 5 and not have done number 1, right? So there's a timeline, a linearity of this that you need to get to number 1 pretty quickly and get that buy-in and get that support. But if number 5 is your entry point, use it. Take advantage of it. Again, that as a former sort of organizational development, leadership development kind of guy, that's where I lived for a long time. Was in the program piece of this. Take advantage of it.
We have a lot of the tools you're going to need going forward. You're going to see around strengths-based culture over the next year or 2. You're going to see an enormous amount of material coming out that you're going to take advantage of. One of those launches next week. It's called It's the Manager. And we have a brand new book for you to kind of talk about helping your managers. We've done 2. It's called The Coaches on that recently, if you haven't watched those yet. But to understand, the managers are a key part of this, and they're just getting hammered in organizations from both the top and the bottom and all around. And their engagement is worse than the employees. Mm-hmm. Managers, we have a management crisis, and we've got some things to help with that as well. So if you haven't checked that out, it's themanager.com. Austin, we have about 5 minutes left, and I know you want to highlight some things that are coming in the community. I've kind of informed our certified coaches group of some of this already through that group, but we want to talk a little bit about it openly and understand we don't have all the answers at this point. But we want to let the community know well in advance of some changes that are coming. So why don't you highlight those?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, 1 month from today, so today is May 3rd, June 3rd will be the kickoff of the 2019 Clifton Strengths Summit, right? So that will be the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Everything I just talked about at a high level in this idea of the 5 sort of steps of strengths-based culture. Tiffany, who you've heard Jim and I speak of earlier, and my best friend at work, Mara Hugerhouse, the two of them, a dynamite duo, will be leading a breakout session at the summit, digging deeper into everything we just talked about. So they'll share some more of a research, some more tactics, some more success stories, and be able to sort of dig you into that. So that's one of the great breakouts. I'll be there leading 2 breakouts myself, one on keys to executive coaching with strengths with the incomparable Jackie Merritt. And then the second one I'll be doing on the connection between strengths and decision-making with Nate Dvorak, one of our great research guys who's going to be helping me with that. So a lot of great stuff coming at the summit. If you haven't already, that's going to sell out pretty quick. So that's first thing on the horizon. Super excited about that. The second big thing is what's coming this fall, right? So post-summit this fall, right? We're excited to be merging all of our great platforms into Gallup Access, right? And Gallup Access is our fantastic sort of portal for all things we do at Gallup, and that we're excited to be integrating a lot of the functionality and a lot of the things that Gallup Strength Center does into Access this fall. It's really, for us, it's incredibly exciting because it is the first time that we'll be able to direct people to one place. We've got clients right now using multiple platforms to get their business done. And so Access is going to bring it in there. One of the biggest perks of that is at your fingertips at all the learning content, all of the content we're publishing on multiple platforms right now that it's going to be more centrally located. And by the time 2020 rolls around, a lot of this enhanced functionality and giving you coaches the chance to do things that you can't do right now on Strength Center, right? And so we're very excited that our tech team and our partners have been working behind the scenes now for months on end to bring this to fruition. So I'm coming to you today, letting you know how excited, legitimately, it's not just positivity and futuristic. I'm actually truly excited about where we're taking everything, but also that we'll be in touch a lot over the next couple months as we get more definitive on dates, as we get more definitive on features and functionalities, right? That's what we're working on behind the scenes. So really excited to sort of take us in the next step of this sort of evolution we're going through.
Yeah, and just a reminder, you want to stay close to us in all this communication. Austin and I will spend a lot of time. This is not the last time you're going to see Austin, and we have plans. We don't have a lot of the details right now because many of them are still being finalized. But as those become available, we have a communications plan for you. Those will come out through the Certified Coaches newsletter. For those who are certified, it will be coming out. By the way, we got some. You want to stay, if you're certified, you want to stay close to that newsletter. We got some amazing things coming.
Yeah.
But that being said, now is not the time to go to sleep. And on us, we got a lot of things going on. I would hate for you to wake up in December and say what happened. So make sure you're staying close to us. Yeah. Austin, what else?
I would just say, sort of my way of reintroducing myself to this community. I was a guest on this, Jim.
Yeah.
Season two, Called to Coach guest when I was a client. I'm excited to be here. I want to make sure everybody understands, if you haven't watched the old Called to Coach episodes with Kurt Leesfeld or the old Theme Thursdays with Kurt Leesfeld, if you consider yourself a strengths nut, like I do, a strengths advocate, an addict, whatever term of affection you want to use, do yourself a favor and watch those. I had the pleasure of learning from Kurt and being mentored by Kurt around this. Nobody in the world who knows this stuff better or embodied it more. So when I think about my role going forward, right, sort of my role in the community and with Gallup and as part of this movement is to maintain the mission of strengths going forward. How do we grow it to more people? How do we give more people the chance to transform their life? The way my life has been transformed, the way so many of you and your clients' lives have been transformed through this, right? So belief number 4, I am mission driven, right? So I am here because I believe in it. My life has been transformed through it. I'm excited to work with all of you more and more. Looking forward to the feedback you have, the ideas you have, and helping all of us really, really excel going down the road.
Well, Austin, thanks for taking the time today.
Absolutely.
I am really looking forward to spending more time with you. It's not a very well kept secret that the reason I do Called to Coach Theme Thursday is because I get to hang out with some of the coolest people at Gallup. It was just an excuse to be able to have a conversation with you guys.
Yeah.
And so I bring the tech side of things, but I'm really, really excited about the team that's growing around this. I'm excited for what's coming at the summit, what's coming post-summit. For those of you who can attend summit, you're going to see a ton of things come out of it and a lot of great stuff coming forward. We have a whole season 5 of Theme Thursday that will launch after the summit. We've condensed those down, 2 shows a week, 20 minutes each, power packed for you to take to your orgs to do whatever you need to do with. And those are coming for you. We got a lot of great stuff coming for you. So stay close to us. Austin, thanks for saying yes to the role. Thanks for coming on today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
We will remind everyone to take full advantages of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strengths Center. I won't be able to say that too much longer. I don't know what I'm going to say. I guess I'm available at Gallup Access. I'll have to figure out how to say that as we get. As I've said that like 8 million times. Send your questions or comments to us. If you have any questions around this, coaching@gallup.com. We'll get that right. We'll get that routed to the right person. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of this program, as well as a lot of past ones at the Coaches blog, which, by the way, is going through major changes at the same time as well. We'll have a brand new, it's going to be on Gallup.com, improved search engine. We're actually going to update all the posts. It's going to get a major overhaul this summer, which is going to be great. And so you want to stay close for us as those links come out. That will launch August 16th on a new platform. And we will remove Blogger and we'll be on the Gallup.com property. We're excited about that as well. But for today, coaching.gallup.com. If you're interested in becoming a Gallup certified strengths coach, you can see a list of all the courses that lead to that. They're available on our courses page. Really easy to remember, courses.gallup.com. Get you there as well. We also have courses available still at a discount, but not many at the summit. If you haven't signed up for a course yet, you can still do that. Head out to CliftonStrengthsSummit.com to get signed up for the summit as well. And again, it's coming up and it's going to sell out. So if you're planning on coming, now is the day to get that done. We want to thank you for joining us today. We look forward to a lot of new stuff coming ahead. We got a lot of great webcasts ahead for you. Make sure you get subscribed, signed up, newsletters, all that stuff. We'll see you next time. And with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.